Ziana Graham was born on September 21st, 1993, in Vallejo, California. She was a bright, energetic child who loved singing and dancing, always lighting up the room with her smile. Growing up in a military family, she spent a lot of her childhood with her mom, but her dad, who was in the military, wasn't always around because of his deployments. His time away from home had a big impact on her and her family. When her dad came home from one of his deployments, things weren't the same. He struggled with addiction, and it deeply affected the entire family. His battle with substance abuse led to him eventually leave the family, creating a void in Ziana's life. As a young girl, she had always been close to him, and his absence left her feeling lost and confused. The instability at home made things harder for her, and soon Ziana began to hang out with the wrong crowd. She fell into a life of partying and using drugs as a way to cope with the pain of her family falling apart. What started as trying to fit in with others quickly spiraled into an addiction of her own. Her mom, worried about the direction her daughter was heading, made the tough decision to send her to live with her grandmother in Marietta, Georgia, in hopes of giving her a fresh start. Living with her grandmother, Ziana had a chance to rebuild her life, but it wasn't easy. She still struggled with the demons from her past. By 15, she found out she was pregnant with her first child, which brought both fear and hope into her life. Despite the challenges of being a young mother, Ziana vowed to give her child the stability she hadn't had growing up. At 16, she married her high school sweetheart, and soon after, they had a second child. However, young marriages are often filled with pressure, and the weight of raising two children quickly became overwhelming. The relationship ended by the time she turned 18, leaving Ziana to navigate motherhood on her own. Even though her first marriage ended, Ziana didn't give up. She continued to raise her children, working hard to provide for them. Over the next few years, she would have two more children, both from separate relationships. None of these relationships lasted, but Ziana remained committed to her children. She worked a variety of jobs, from babysitting to styling hair, and even helping out with local businesses, always making sure her kids had what they needed. She did everything she could to make sure they never went without. During this time, she met Christopher Scarborough, a local painter. He seemed to offer Ziana the stability she had been longing for. He treated her and her children with kindness and affection, which made her feel loved and appreciated for the first time in a long time. For a while, it seemed like she had found someone who truly cared for her and wanted to be a part of her family. But as time passed, cracks began to show in their relationship. Christopher became more controlling, and the tension between them grew. Ziana found herself pregnant with Christopher's child, but she didn't want to have another baby. She already had 4 children, and the thought of adding another one to the mix was too much for her to handle. So she made the difficult decision to terminate the pregnancy. To avoid conflict, she told Christopher she had a miscarriage. For a time, it seemed like the lie was holding, but eventually Christopher found out the truth through a message on Facebook from someone who revealed what had really happened. Christopher confronted Ziana about the pregnancy after receiving the Facebook message that revealed she had terminated it. He was furious and demanded answers. When Ziana admitted what she had done, she explained that she simply wasn't in a position to have another child. With 4 children already and the weight of raising them mostly on her own, she felt it was the best decision for her and her family. But Christopher didn't see it that way. He felt betrayed and angry, interpreting her choice as a personal slight and a rejection of the life he thought they were building together. As Ziana tried to explain, Christopher's anger only grew. He began yelling, pacing, and throwing accusations, his emotions spiraling out of control. The argument escalated rapidly, with his frustration turning into rage. At some point, Christopher snapped. He physically attacked Ziana, his hands wrapping around her neck as he vented his anger and heartbreak. The situation spiraled into a deadly assault as he strangled her, ignoring any cries or resistance. When it was over, Ziana lay lifeless, and Christopher fled the home, leaving behind a horrifying scene that would soon unravel the tragedy of her death. Later that day, the police received an anonymous 911 call requesting a welfare check at Ziana's home. The caller expressed concern, stating that something might have happened to her. Officers arrived at the residence and spoke with Ziana's grandmother, who informed them that Ziana was in her room and was likely just sleeping. The officers left after finding no immediate signs of trouble. With no immediate concerns, the officers left the scene, believing there was no need for further investigation. However, Ziana's grandmother, still feeling uneasy, decided to check on her after the police left. She went to Ziana's room, only to find her lying lifeless on the floor. Horrified, the grandmother immediately called 911, reporting that Ziana was dead. The police returned to the home and entered Ziana's bedroom, where they confirmed she was deceased. Her lifeless body was found on the floor, with visible signs of trauma that hinted at a violent struggle. The scene was quickly secured, and her body was sent to the medical examiner's office for an autopsy. Days later, the autopsy report revealed that Ziana had died from strangulation. The examination further confirmed a cervical fracture in her spine, consistent with the immense pressure applied to her neck during the attack. This finding confirmed the case as a homicide and launched an intense investigation into who was responsible for her untimely and brutal death. The police immediately launched a thorough investigation into Ziana's tragic death. They started by piecing together the events of that day and identifying anyone who might have had contact with her. Early on, detectives focused on the anonymous 911 call that had prompted the initial welfare check. Tracing the origin of the call, they discovered it had been made from a prepaid cell phone registered to Christopher Scarborough. When questioned, Christopher claimed he made the 911 call because he had been concerned for Ziana's well-being. He told police that she had been using drugs recently and hanging around the wrong crowd, which worried him. Christopher insisted that his call was made out of genuine concern, not guilt. Without sufficient evidence, he was not immediately charged and remained free, casting suspicion elsewhere. For a time, the case seemed to stall, but a breakthrough came during a therapy session with one of Ziana's children. The child courageously revealed chilling details from that fateful night, recounting the sounds of a violent argument and the horrifying moment they believed Christopher killed their mother. This testimony prompted police to re-examine their evidence and confront Christopher again. Under mounting pressure, Christopher eventually broke down and confessed to the crime. He admitted to killing Ziana in a fit of rage after learning she had terminated their pregnancy. Following his confession, he was arrested and formally charged with her murder, bringing some answers to her grieving family and beginning the process of justice for Ziana. Ziana's tragic death left a void that could never be filled. Her children lost their mother, her family lost a beloved daughter and granddaughter, and her friends lost a light that brightened every room she entered. The truth of what happened that fateful day eventually came to light, but it could not undo the pain caused by Christopher's actions. Her story serves as a heartbreaking reminder of the dangers of domestic violence and the importance of recognizing its warning signs. Ziana's legacy